So today I'm going to try and go through my home studio guitar amp rig, which consists of Mesa Boogie Mark V head, a Marshall 1936 cabinet,
and a TC Electronics G system.
I've had the Mark V head for approximately 2 years now. I've had the G system for a little over a year. During that time, I've got things pretty much tweaked the way I like them for my sound, my personal sound, for my home recordings that I do. I'm just a basement rock star. I'm not in a band or anything like that. I like to jam along with the tunes that I like from the 70s and 80s, and I like to do some home recording of some originals and that kind of thing. So let's get to it. Okay, let's start with my home studio rack setup here. Across the top, I've got some pedals that are in the loops of the G system, the first 4 loops. First is a Boss DS1, which I really rarely use. I'll use it on over some clean patches on the clean channel of my Mesa Boogie. Rarely used. Next is the MXR Distortion Plus. Again, I rarely use it. I put it on some Randy Rhoads patches that I use. Third is Ibanez Tube Screamer TS9, which is my main overdrive pedal that I use for most of my patches on channel 2 of the Mark V. Also, I have a Boss GE7 EQ, basically used as a boost. I don't use that very often either. Underneath that is a Behringer rack tuner. When I bought that, it was down between that and a Korg Pitch Black. Even though the Pitch Black looks a lot cooler, this had some more features on it. It's got a built-in metronome, among other things. There's alternate tunings you can do with it and stuff like that. So it had a lot more features. Price was, I think, a little bit cheaper even than the Pitch Black. So I went with this one. It's also got some lights under it so you can see the rest of your rack unit. Underneath that is an ART power base. It's just basically got 8 AC outlets on the back of it. So I've only got 1 power cord running from my rack. Beneath that, we have a Presonus Audio Box 1818 VSL. It's not a part of my guitar rig at all. It's my audio interface for my computer for my recording. It has 8 inputs for mics or instrument level inputs. Quite the unit. Works really well, but you can see that in my home studio tour video. And beneath that is the TC Electronics G system brain box that I have rack mounted. When you have it rack mounted like this, you can have very short leads going from this to the amplifier head, and you get much better sound, a lot less noise, and you only have 1 cable running out, which is this Ethernet cable running out to your main pedal board. Okay, next we have the Mesa Boogie Mark V head. Like I said, I've had it about 2 years or so. Underneath that is the Marshall 1936 cabinet, which is 150 watts. I run the Mesa Boogie head on all the channels at 90 watts using a Variac power. I find I get the best sound that I like personally out of it that way. Finally, we have the TC Electronics G system control board for your pedal board, along with a Roland EV5 expression pedal. So let's see how I've got this stuff wired up. First, my guitar plugs directly into the front of the Behringer rack tuner. From the rear output of the Behringer rack tuner goes directly into the rear input of the G system rack unit. From there, the insert send on the back of the G system, I use a balance cable that goes to an ART hum eliminator. It's called a Clear Box 2, and from there to the front of the amp. From the front of the amp, the loop send goes into the insert return of the G system, and then the left output of the G system goes to the amplifier loop return. All these cables here are the loops for the pedals I have that you saw earlier. course, the back of the TC Electronics G system has a USB cable out to the computer, so you can use the visor program to program your patches. And it's also got a SPDIF out that I use that goes to my PreSonus audio box for recording direct. On the back of the Mark V, I have the channel select set to foot switch, the loop assign set to foot switch, the loop active switch set to loop active. The send level is at noon for the effects loop. I have all three reverbs set to 0. You cannot toggle between reverb anyways. I use the reverb on the G system, so the reverb is off, but I have them set at 0 anyways. To use the channel switching functions of the G system with the Mesa Boogie Mark V, first of all, you can't use your foot switch and the external switching of the Mark V at the same time, so you have to pick one or the other. I go with the channel switching with the G system. To do that, you need 2 Y cables, a TRS to TR Y cables, and from there you can switch between your 3 channels and also turn on and off the EQ and turn on and off the solo boost. However, I don't use the solo boost on my amp, so I left that blank. That leaves me an extra part of my Y cable that I run to my secondary amp when I run 2 amps to switch between clean and dirty channels. Now this ERT Cleanbox 2 hum eliminator that I use, I don't need it for my setup. I don't have any noise issues with my G system and my Mark V setup at all. What happens though is when I'm recording, I'll often use a Marshall combo amp as well, and I always get a ground loop hum. So I just leave this in there. That looks after that problem. I can hook in a second amp anytime I want without any issues. So I don't know how well you can see this. I'm taking a shot of my computer screen through a digital camera. But this is the visor software that helps program your TC Electronics G system. Everything's programmable right on the floorboard itself. However, I prefer the software. This view gives you a look at your banks and your patches. This is how I have it set up at the moment. But what I want to go through is my global settings for the G system with the Mark V. Now, first thing to keep in mind is that all my guitars, except for one, have EMG pickups. The one that does not have an EMG pickup, the pickups that are in it are Seymour Duncans that are very similar in output to my EMGs. So I don't have any issues when I'm changing guitars as far as any input sensitivity with my G system. However, that might be something that could cause a problem if you have a lot of different guitars with a lot of different output pickups. It could cause problems with your input sensitivity and clipping, or not getting enough signal at all. So first off, my global routing I have set to serial. I've tried different parallel, what have you got? You got parallel, semi-parallel, and serial too. A couple of my patches have some parallel and semi-parallel. However, my global settings routing is set to serial. That seems to work best for me. The guitar input select is set to rear. That's how I have mine set up. That depends on your setup, if you need to go into the front of the unit or the back of the unit, depending whether you're rack mounted or floor mounted with the brain box. The guitar input sensitivity, this comes down to basically your pickups and stuff. And with my Mark V, I did a lot of testing to get this sounding, with the levels being with the G system bypassed and the amp straight through by itself, and with the G system, the levels are as close as I can get them. I have it set at 4 decibels. Now my loop level is 10 decibels. The loop headroom I've set at 2 decibels. Volume set at 0 decibels. Volume placement set at input. Output level 0. And boost max volume 0. I don't use the boost at all on this unit. The insert lock is set to lock, obviously. The preamp of my Mesa Boogie Mark V is inside the G system. So basically you have your filter and compression, then the preamp, which was the insert loop of the G system, the preamp of the Mark V, then you have your time-based effects and all that other stuff afterwards, and your reverb at the end.
Now this section down here at the bottom is where you can customize the switches on the unit, the floorboard unit itself. I do have it customized. I have compression in the top left, relay, which is my amp switching. I have it set to turn the EQ on and off of the Mark V in the second position. Loop 1, loop 2, loop 3, loop 4 I don't have a toggle for. The rest of it is basically set as the factory presets. So here are the clean settings that I have on my Mark V. These are my settings for my sound, for my recording that work for me. But I know there's going to be people asking what my settings are, so I'm just going to go ahead and show them. I have my clean channel set to clean, the EQ set to foot switch, 90 watt mode. The gain is around 10:30, 11 o'clock. The master set just before noon. The presence is set about 1 o'clock. The treble set about 1 o'clock as well. The mids I have down around 9 o'clock, and the bass right around 12 o'clock. So here's my clean tone with the G system bypassed. And here's one of my clean tone patches with the G system. This has the doubler effect, some tape delay, and some room reverb. Now here are the settings for my channel 2 on my Mesa Boogie Mark V. This is my settings for my sound, for my tone. Keep that in mind. Also on top of this there's a tube screamer in front of this. Everything set about noon on the tube screamer. I have it set on crunch mode. The EQ is set to foot switch. We're in 90 watt mode. Keep in mind, I use the Variac power. I think it sounds better than the full power option on this amp. My gain set about 1 o'clock. Master set about 9 o'clock. Presence set about 3 o'clock. Treble set about 2 o'clock. Mids at noon. And the bass set about 9 o'clock. So here's my tone with the Mesa Boogie Mark V on the crunch channel. Channel 2 with the G system bypassed. And here's my channel 2 crunch tone with the G system. Now here's my settings on channel 3 of the Mark V, and as well as the EQ. I don't use channel 3 that much, but so my settings aren't really dialed in as much as I might like. However, this Mark II C+ mode is an excellent mode. You can get a lot of good tones out of it. But when I had that set up, it was basically the same, sounded the same as how I had my crunch channel set up. So it was really 2 channels the same. So I have it set in extreme mode, which is a lot of gain. The EQ is set to foot switch, and again, it's in 90 watt mode. The normal bright switch I have set in the normal position. The gain I have around 1 o'clock, the master around 9 o'clock, the presence around 1 o'clock, the treble around 1 o'clock, the mids about 10, 11 o'clock, and the bass just under 9 o'clock. So now to the EQ. I don't use it that much. I have channel 1 and channel 3 set to the preset knobs, the preset depth knobs. Channel 1 I have set about noon. Channel 3 I have set about 10 o'clock or so. Now basically the knob turned all the way to the left is a flat EQ, and as you turn it to the right it creates the Mark V V type EQ setting, and it gets deeper and deeper the farther you go. So I found that I like it right around there, around 10 o'clock. Channel 2 I have set to the sliders. Now disregard my settings on the sliders. I'm constantly playing with them. I've not found the ideal position for them yet. So these settings don't really matter. They don't mean anything. So thanks for watching. I hope that if you have a similar setup to this, a Mark V Mesa Boogie with a G system, and you're trying to get it set up, that I could answer some questions for you. If you do have any questions or comments, post them below. Thank you.